Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here? And please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better. Kevin Voorhees, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you, man?
Doing great.
Hey,
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. We've been talking about this for a while, and you and I have known each other for a while. Our stories intersected 2009?
A little before, I think.
Was it 8?
Yeah. 2007, 2008, somewhere in there.
You rented me a car at Enterprise. My car broke down for some reason at the Loveland Enterprise here on Eisenhower.
Yep.
And you're doing the Enterprise thing, right? Like they've got their thing down.
Oh, yeah.
And then you open the trunk, right, to help me get something in or out of it. You saw M&E signs.
I did. Yeah. So I, doing my Enterprise thing, helping out the customer, and we're loading these yard signs, and it says M&E Painting. And I said, oh, I painted growing up in summers and stuff, and so I kind of knew how to paint. And we're loading these signs up, and I said, oh, interesting. Is this who you work for? And you said, no, it's my company. I thought, oh man. And just kind of a light bulb moment. We're about the same age. I'm kind of slaving away at this job that I don't really like, and just a chance meeting with you, and it kind of stuck. Like, hey, I know painting. You seemed cool, and I just kind of remembered you from that moment.
So I drive off in the car, back to business, whatever's going on. And then you sent an email. Did you email, call? But you reached out after that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was probably 08, kind of into 08. I got to a point in my career where I needed to do something different. And you and M&E were the first thing that came to mind. So I just shot you an email and said, hey, you probably don't remember me, but I rented your car, and, I know painting. Are you hiring?
Yeah, and you didn't have the beard. You didn't have the big beard back then. Because everybody knows you now for your beard.
Right.
But I did remember you, and I'm like, dang, that guy was a nice guy. Like Enterprise always has just great people. Whatever they are teaching there, like it's great service. So I remember you, and I remember coming back to Emily. I'm like, we don't have anything. Like we don't have a sales position, I think. So if that year's correct, I'm still doing just about everything in the business. We had kind of secondary estimators, but I'm still running the main sales. I think Emily's in the business at that point, or just getting out. Because this is right around when Riley's born or about to be born.
Yep.
And I was like, hey, you want to power wash houses for $9 an hour, $10 an hour when we need a little extra help, right?
Yep.
That's what we started with.
Yeah. Yep. And I jumped on that opportunity. I would have taken anything at that point, and I'm glad it was power washing and M&E. And May of 09, I started power washing.
So when you say like take anything at that point, were you just not happy? Was it dead end? Because I know that you've got some potential for advancement in that industry that you were in, but what was it where you were just done with those guys at that point? What was it about that if you remember back?
Yeah, I mean, I met a lot of great people. Like you said, they do a good job of kind of recruiting out of college, and it's a lot of, like-minded people that either played sports in college or had a little bit of competitive nature to them. And so met a ton of great people. But it's one of those models where, if they hire 100 people, they expect 10 to make it past a few years and just kind of let the rest fizzle out. And I climbed the ladder a little bit, but it just wasn't a good lifestyle. Long hours, you're moving different branches, you're traveling. And so, I wasn't married at the time, but had a serious girlfriend that became my wife. And I just wasn't living a healthy lifestyle, just working too much, and knew that I needed to make a change. And that was tough. I'd not really quit a job before. They always just kind of ran its course. And so.
Or they fired you.
Yeah, right.
Have you ever been fired?
No, nope.
So it just ran out, it kind of ran the way. And so this is the first time you're exiting from something.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, as much as I knew that's what needed to happen, it was still tough. And Callie, my wife, at the time, she was like, "Are you sure?" And I didn't really have anything lined up, but I just knew I had to just set the end date and be done with it.
So you're like, this M&E, I'm going to go wash. Hey, Callie, I love you. I think I love you. You're about to get married soon.
Yep.
I'm going to quit this job where I can climb this corporate ladder.
Yep.
But you see what's coming up with that ladder, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you'd be involved in. And you're like, I'm going to go power wash houses.
Yeah.
For I'm sure it was a pay decrease.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even remember how the pay was, but Yeah, I did, and she kind of came around and was like, "Okay, if that's what you think," and I always had it in the back of my mind that this was just the first step, first rung of the ladder. I knew that I would eventually get into sales or production or something else that was more long term, but I also wasn't afraid to start wherever I had to start, and I'm glad I did. I think anytime you're taking a job or working for a company, I think there's some credibility when you've started at the bottom rung or shown that you're not afraid to do anything, for the company. And I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
And it's funny because we're in our 40s now, right? Getting there.
I know.
Kids, Riley said that Emily and I are ancient the other day. He's like 40. We were hanging out with some friends and we were talking about the 90s, like the 80s and the 90s. And Riley goes, the what? So that was before 2000, 80s and 90s. And I was like, that's like when we were kids in the 80s and 90s talking
Yes.
about our parents from the 40s and 50s, right? Think about that. So like now, my kids are a little bit older than yours, but starting to have those conversations. So I don't see that these days. I don't see a lot of people that are willing to come in, scrub toilets, start at the bottom level. I see a lot of sense of entitlement from people coming through these doors here. I don't know about you, but you see who comes through the doors and who's out there, right? Dropping resumes. But I see that a lot less. Why do you think that is? Or I guess do you agree with that? Do you see that? And if so, what do you see and why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's a little bit of the microcosm of just society now, microwave society. And if it's not instant, there's no real perseverance or, stick-to-itiveness where people are able to look past, the first couple hurdles or first couple years in a career or something like that. And, yeah, as far as why, I don't know. I think it's just, how a lot of things are, not just work or career, but, you look at anything, whether it's, food or entertainment or just all these aspects of life. It's just, it happens instantly and quickly. Google, if it's not on the first page of the Google search results, then you just stop looking into it. And then, that's another example. When we were kids and didn't have the internet, I was like, you had to go to the library and, get more than one book and actually spend some time doing it. And so I think it's just kind of where society's gone. And this is just one example.
And the microwave seems to be getting faster and more high powered, at least in the perceived results that everybody thinks they're going to get when they see the overnight success story. We were talking about Pirate Patch the other day. That thing didn't make money for Dave and I. We did not take a distribution on that for a decade.
Wow.
And then we finally did, and everybody's like, "Yay, that's great! I want to do that." It's like, hold on, do you know we ate a lot of shit for 10 years in this thing,
Yeah.
And I don't think people are willing to do that. How do you think social plays into all that? Right, when you pop up there and you see the 6-pack abs, the perfect fried eggs, the family vacation, right? The screenshots and snapshots of just success.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a slippery slope for sure. You're on there, you're seeing everybody's highlight reel, essentially, and I think there's a bit more awareness about that now. But definitely, when it started up until fairly recently, I think it was not good for most people as far as mental health. I think it's natural to compare, and you're adding all these friends, and you're seeing all these amazing things they're doing, and vacations and traveling, and I think for a lot of people it just makes you feel like you're not adequate, you're not as good, you're not where you should be, stuff like that for your age. And well, I think there's a lot of good, as far as connecting or staying connected with people that you may not be able to otherwise. I don't know. I think as far as more good or bad, I guess depending on the day, but I think you have to be very careful in, how you consume that, how much you consume it, and what you take away.
I was speaking at the sales and marketing conference, and Darius Bell, who spoke there, said that 99.9% of people on social, they're consumers of that, right? So they're looking for the quick fix, all these things, right? That go, hey, here's the quick, easy way to get something. Oh, no, I feel bad because I didn't. And they don't see the hard work behind it. But everybody, 99.9%, they are consumers. And there's just this less than 1% of people that are actually producing content. So I've thought about that a lot of why are you on social media, right? Are you really there to stay connected? Are you there to get this dopamine fix?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you there to bring value? Are you there to produce content, produce things that are good and real?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, like we were talking earlier with the microwave society, it's just a way to fill your time. And, people have a hard time just being still, being quiet, thinking and whether it's dopamine or habit. I think that's a lot of it. And then, I think there is something to that mental, fix. And then also just habit of phones and scrolling and just doing something, versus just being able to be idle and still and quiet. I think that's something that is challenging to a lot of people.
And how do you do that? And I'm asking because for those of you that don't know, Kevin and I, we've had a long relationship, and we talk about leadership languages. Mm-hmm. You and I are the polar opposite of personality styles, right? I'm the doer, I'm the visionary, you're the steady paced. I mean, we hold up our comparative personality styles. And so says yours that you are better at or have a higher capacity to just sit and be and stay still, at least on paper, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you got to do it. But how do you do that? Like, so for somebody that's listening to this, because our listener base, it's successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, I think more men than women. Mm-hmm. I think more men than women are listening to this. And, it's easy to say, right? Easy to say on paper, just unplug, disconnect. But how do you do that? Like, how do you practically do that? Because I see you do that, and I see you do something really important, which is say no to a lot of things, and even to me, which I love. At first, I'm like, dude, what? You just told me no. Oh, yeah, good job. Like, good job. So take us through that if somebody's struggling with that, because I struggle with that. Like, I want to know how you do that.
Yeah, well, I'll start with saying no to you. That was, it's funny you mentioned that. So that first year at M&E, I power washed in 2009, and I think we were rolling around spring of 2010, and we had talked about, okay, Kevin, you want to get into sales and estimates? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, March, April, the exterior season starts going, and you're like, hey, we haven't found a power washer yet. Do you think you could wash a few houses? And I don't know how or why I decided to tell you no. But I was like, no, I'm selling this year. I'm not washing. And I'll never forget, you said, good. I'm glad you told me no. And you kind of gave me that feedback of it's almost a respect thing. And for me, it was not in my character, especially only being a year into this new company. And so that was a great lesson for me early on that it is okay to say no. And so, for me, I think a couple things. One is defining yourself. There's been a couple influential people that helped me get to where I was able to define myself, and sort of pairing with that is being very intentional with my time. And part of that saying no, I got to, a little background. I have 3 sons, 10, 8, and 6, and the first 2 are, kind of right on schedule, 2 years apart, and the third one was a little bit more of a surprise. And, at the time I remember thinking, okay, this wasn't the plan, but it really brought clarity to me in how I spend, money, how I spend my time, and kind of leading up to this, with, whether it's Jeff Lucas doing our life plan, Jim Hensel, Strength and Honor Code. Yeah. I got very dialed in with my purpose and values. And so once you do that, you can use it as a filter when things are coming up, whether it's a time ask from someone or something, and you kind of run it through your filter of your values and your purpose. And if it doesn't align, it makes it easy to say no.
And I love that. And for those of you that don't know who, Jeff Lucas, he's the person that facilitates our life plan. So we pay for team members full-time that have been here a year to go through this process, right? It's a 2-day facilitated process. Every time I do it, I want to become a facilitator because I love it. I love what it did for me.
Oh, it's amazing.
You can clearly state your existence statement. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then Jim, Jim's since moved away, But what were some of the big nuggets from those programs? Because you can clearly define it within the scope of a life plan existence statement from a scope of who I am through Jim Hensel's. But like, what were some of those big takeaways? So you say, hey, you should know your values and your purpose. Use that as a filter, but break that down. Like, give an example of what are one of those statements. Give me an example of reflecting back when you've either told me no back then during power washing or last week you told me no on something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think you have to be in the right frame of mind going into an exercise like that, where you have to want to get that for yourself. If it's being facilitated by somebody else or the company's paying for it and you're just going along for the ride, you're not going to get the value out of it unless you know that that's something you want. So it's being really vulnerable, being really honest, kind of leaving no stone unturned. And if you're not willing to do that, then it's probably not going to have the effect or the benefit that it could. And for me, I guess the timing was just right. I knew that's what I wanted, and I was willing to, kind of go along with or share, or open up to whatever degree I had to, because I didn't want to not take advantage of that opportunity. And so, you got to be in the right frame of mind. And for me, the timing just worked out.
Yeah. And I remember that was that transition for me, because I can't remember, like Jim Hensel was definitely before we got connected with Bill Sumner, right? So I did my first fire walk and then came back and told you guys about it. And then I think Bill came up to another real estate company here.
Yeah.
And I think that's when we did one together. So this is like 2011, 12, 13, right? And this is, and another person we didn't talk about is Bill Sumner, who's since passed.
Yeah.
But he used to work for Tony Robbins, neuro-linguistic programming and everything that Tony does with breakthrough coaching, rewriting programs. Jeff and the life plan kind of comes a little bit later, which is the Patterson process. And then Jim Hensel came in kind of right about the same time that Bill did, right? Or was it before or after? I don't remember.
Yeah, Jim was a little bit earlier, and then Bill, and then Jeff. And what's interesting is they were all very different in how they, kind of their program, how they did it themselves individually. But they all, I had great takeaways from all of them. And again, going back to frame of mind, and you'll find what you're looking for. So if you go into something like that and you're looking for, oh man, this is a waste of time and I could be doing X, Y, and Z, or, if you're looking for ways to improve or bring clarity and purpose and values to your life, you'll find it. And what was interesting about those three is they were all very different, but all very powerful kind of in their own way.
And they're all unique guys with unique stories that either created a process or plugged into one.
Yep.
And then they're taking that to other people to pour that into other people, right? Like we're on episode 1. Season 1, right? Of Gentle Art of Leadership. It's the pour into people season. So it's all these people that have poured into you, right?
Yeah.
So share from Jim's Strength and Honor. What is your statement? Do you remember that? Because he keeps it a little more simple, a little less.
I don't remember my specific statement, but one of the big takeaways I had, because his thing was really, defining your values and kind of getting clarity on these handful of things that you hold deep in your heart. And I remember when we wrapped up, he said something like, okay, that was the easy part. Now comes the hard part. And I thought, what do you mean we're done? And he said, well, now that now you have to live that way, knowing your values. He said, now is the test.
Yeah.
You just defined yourself, so prove it, And I remember thinking, oh man, I wasn't thinking of it like that, but he was right. And if you go through this process and you come out with these values, if you're really bought in and you really believe this, then it's time to live accordingly.
Well, and I talk about the whole, soundbite, rah-rah culture, get you all fired up. It's like, I found my purpose.
Yeah.
Like I love Simon Sinek. I remember when we watched him speak before he was really well known. It was 2008 or 9. And we literally sat this far away from him. And he presented Start With Why. And I leave and I'm like, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Start with why. And I come home and Emily's like, so, okay, now what? So start with why, but now what? How do you find that, right? How do you define that? And then how do you continue to live that out? I remember from Jim, I valued and what mine were, it was fight, faith, family, action, accountability, giving, gratitude, love, service, kindness, and excellence. So he goes, great, you stand for that. And then you go out to work, you go out to business, you go out to parenthood, fatherhood, husbandhood the next day, and something comes at you, right? You're approached with a time ask or a struggle, a challenge, or something that just looks like a great opportunity, right? And you say, hey, is this part of who I am and what I'm meant to be, right? Like what that purpose is. Talk about what's your life plan. What did you take out of that? Whether it's the statement or how did that build and how did that stack on top of all these other things that we've been going through for the last decade here together?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately came away with the life statement, as a follower of Jesus, I exist to be the husband my wife desires, the man my sons can respect and emulate, and the dependable helper, encourager, improver, provider that pursues maximum potential. And what I liked about that process is it really dug into your story specifically and things that are part of your life and that were probably more impactful than you give them credit. I think Jeff has a good way of bringing that out and kind of the importance of it, but then also, taking that and kind of, okay, here's why you got to where you are. Now let's, look through the windshield and focus on what you want from here moving forward. And so I think it was just a great combination of owning your past, things that you had control over, things that you didn't have control over, impactful things, and being okay with that and not letting that, he kind of puts it in a way where, there's nothing you can do about that. That is what it is. So now let's take that and let's project forward, what you can control, what you do want. And so it was really just owning my past, being okay with that past, and then getting clear on what I want the present and the future to look like.
It was really funny because we started using this analogy, you and I have, just in-house. I can't remember why this even came up. It was a leadership team, right? I'm going to teach the leadership team. And I heard a sermon or read something, I don't know. And I said, how does a tree grow? And I was going to teach about the tree, right? And that was the day that I first presented this. And I literally didn't know how a tree grew. So as I'm speaking and sharing analogies, I need to understand it if I'm going to stand up and talk about it. So, a tree starts from a seed, and that seed falls from a parent tree. And this blew my mind. I mean, this is, after 10, 15 years of going through this stuff. And it's like that seed has the DNA of the parent tree, and it drops wherever the parent drops it. And I think for me, part of my story and challenges and trauma and the wins and the loss, like everything, right? The whole story is I've circled around it a million different ways. And we're sitting here is, you take that too much on yourself. Like the seed's the seed. You can't control that.
Right.
You can't control your family of origin, what and when and how they decided to make you and put you here. And the environment's the environment.
Yep.
And then you're cultivated in that environment. That seed drops in the soil. And then the people, the experiences, the places, the geography of where you live, and all of these stories, right, fuel you and feed you, like literally nourish your body, your mind, your spirit, and you're receiving all this information in the world within this environment, and that literally imprints you. That is the sprout. You sprout up out of the ground as you start to establish roots, right, which is like that's your programming.
Yeah.
That's your stand. That's your values. Those are the things Jim says you stand for. It's your NLP that Bill talked about or Tony talks about. So as you're sprouting, you're rooting and getting established in this environment that you're continuing to be in. And you don't have a choice a lot of times, right? So then this trunk starts to grow, and you have these layers of your story that start to build their rings, right? You cut a tree, you can tell how old it is. You can see rings. So you have all these experience stacks and lessons, people, places, and things that define who you are. And like what we learned is that's pretty well fixed by time you're 5.
I was just going to say that. I remember working with Bill Sumner, and I think he had you bring a picture of when you were 5 or roughly 5.
Yep.
And that exercise was, okay, by the time you're this age, your programming was pretty much fixed or determined. And man, how mind-blowing is that? Because up until that time, you don't have control of anything. And so that really put into perspective, the programming, the thought patterns, the attitudes that you have were programmed by, like you said, your environment, your parents, whoever was around you. And now, okay, now that makes sense, right? And you get that age and you're just thinking, no wonder I, do this that my mom does, or act like this that my dad does, or whatever the case is. But it really puts it into perspective that, again, that is what it is. So now what do you do with that?
And one of the interesting things I remember, I was born in 81. So he said, Matt, in 1986, when you were 5, your program was fixed. It was written by somebody, say your dad's 30, your parents are 30 at that point, go back 30 years, right, to 51. So in 1986, your program was installed by somebody with a program from 1956.
Yeah.
And you're trying to live in 2012. We're doing this together, right? We're sitting here like, whoa. First, okay, that makes sense. So then what do you do if you don't like the program? Because great, like, everybody can see this on paper. Well, yeah, I do this because it came from a parent, an experience. Yeah, some of that's very helpful, right? Some of that serves you. But when it starts to sabotage you, you don't have to always rewrite your program. There's programmings that are good that we gain from family of origin, from 100%. Experience, from getting my ass kicked and getting bullied and, all of those things that I shared. There was some good stuff that came out of that. But then there's also some stuff that I'm 41, still have. I still get angry, man. You see it here, right? And you see where it sabotages you. And he just talks about, man, you just flip that, you just rewrite that program.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you do that? Like, how was that for you? Because I know the kind of things I was rewriting, man. I was just angry. I had a lot to prove. I was bullied. I never felt loved. I never felt certain. And then the first time I did was when I made a couple $1,000s at 10 years old. So my pursuit of money and millionaire status, and you're here along the way, right? Power washing, doing these things, telling me no. I'm like, I'm going to make money because that's going to give me validation.
Yeah.
And I'm just mad the whole time. I was fueled by anger and coffee. But like for you, like, how did you, what were some of your things, if you're comfortable to share, and like, what was a big thing that you kind of rewrote and reframed? Because I turned anger into appreciation. Yep. It was a beautiful thing, but it was hard, man. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I still have to do it every day.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think the power of words and language was a big takeaway, and we can get into that a little bit later. But one of the bigger things for me was, growing up, I was always praised for, calm, cool, collected, not getting angry. And what that helped me realize was, hey, I have these values. These are the things I stand for. It's okay to get excited when the moment calls for it, if it has to do with these things. And I don't know if it was avoid conflict or, I always just, I didn't really for these certain things. And, one story that came to mind, I have an older brother and a twin sister, and my older brother was who I looked up to growing up. Great guy, lived the right way, all these things, right? And I remember, I don't know if he's 4 years older. He may have been in high school, just out of high school. And, we were at a friend's house or a get together. I don't remember the circumstances, but I remember there was this guy that was kind of giving my brother a hard time, and I froze in the moment, and I did not stand up for my brother. And again, I think part of it's just, calm, cool, collected, and looking back, I was so disappointed in myself. My brother was who I idolized, I looked up to, and I had this moment to kind of return the favor, and I didn't. And I remember thinking, I do not want to do that in that kind of situation ever again.
So unpacking that, like what you just said, I don't want to do that. So you're like, no, I don't ever want to be that, right? This away pattern. So there's this emotion, like highly emotionally charged event. You're feeling down, like, man, I should have stuck up for him, right? Like, you shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yes.
Did you ever talk to him about it? Have you guys ever had that?
Oh yeah.
Conversation? What did he say? Like, what was his perspective at the time?
He didn't really think anything of it.
Right.
He's like, no big deal. And I probably had to. He probably forgot the episode, but it was one of those things that just really, really ate me on the inside. And I thought to myself, okay, why there's a lot of good in calm, cool, collected, and having that, frame of mind. there are times where that's not the best approach.
Put that aside. Bring the other guy out.
Aside. Yeah. And I think, Hensel talked about there's things worth fighting for and things worth dying for. The question is this one of them? And most of the time it's not. But there are times that are. And that to me was one of them that I didn't act on how I would now.
And again, that's like overriding programming from so much praise and so much wiring and pattern and rooting in Kevin's cool, calm, collected. Kevin's cool, calm, collected. That's a good thing. Good thing. Experience comes up. Stand up for brother. Kevin's cool, calm, collected. Wait a minute. Didn't serve. Sabotage.
Yep.
You unpack that moment. You reframe that moment. Whatever lens you look. Jim's lens, Bill's lens, the tree of life.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So moving forward, how has that changed? So like when's a time that you've popped in and you're like, let's fight recently?
Well, I haven't had too many. And I think it's probably because I think most of the time situations aren't worth fighting or dying for. And, where I've really put emphasis on it is with my 3 sons. And I talk to them all the time about, hey, you need to look out for each other, protect each other. And, I want to really get across to them that, it's okay if the time calls for it, kind of, I guess, because that's what I didn't have maybe when I was a kid, that I knew that would be okay. But I think a lot of stuff, and maybe it's just me, but I think more often than not, there's no need for that. Again, getting back to your values and your purpose, if it's spouse, children, there's some things that are pretty universal that I think most people will go to whatever the level they need to. And I've been fortunate that I just haven't had to. But I definitely look at those situations with a different frame of mind and an awareness that I'll be doing and saying what I need to do when the time calls for it. Yeah.
And I sit here because Emily and I were joking, having a conversation this weekend, but I'm just the opposite because of what I went through, getting bullied all the time, looking over my shoulder. And I decided long time ago, hey, nobody stood up for me. So not only am I going to stand up for myself, but I'm going to stand up for other people. And at one point it was like, I'm going to go look for fights and pick fights and see, I'm going to do justice. I'm going to serve justice everywhere. Yeah. And, I'm even talking to Emily about that here. We have a jiu-jitsu academy and we're teaching kids to stand up for themselves. We don't put up with bullies. We've got a situation right now going on in a real estate deal in a real estate community where there's just a dirtbag business guy. He's not a man of his word. He's a bully. And I've sat there for 3 years just watching him bully people. And I fired a shot yesterday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to stand there. And then I went out after that and I fired another shot at a couple other people. And then I looked back and I'm like, yeah, I probably didn't need to fire that shot. Like this one right now is worth the fight, but I'm always peeling back.
Yeah.
Like, again, we're yin and yang here. Right. And you see it in here, right? You see it in here. You saw the guy that came in and threatened one of the females that works here. And I was more than happy to go down to the front lobby and meet with him and give him about 2 different options, both involving apologizing to her. Right. Yep. But like, that's what I got to peel back on a lot. So working on that.
Well, and I think you've done a great job. You've grown so much in that department, since I've known you and worked here, that you have a great awareness and ability to pick your spots. And so when it gets to that level with you, I know there's a reason. Whereas maybe earlier in my career,
listen to this guy
it wasn't quite that clear.
Look at you being all diplomatic here, saying that. No, I mean, I share a lot. We've been through a lot together. I think for new people that come into the company, they meet 2023 Matt, right? Who's looking forward, and I feel like I'm 2030 Matt. Like I'm striving to be that now. What I see in the future, and you're like, man, I knew 2007 Matt. Hey, just wanted to give a big shout out and thank you to one of our sponsors, Lit Lighting Solutions. Lit Lighting Solutions provides permanent decorative lighting for residential homes and commercial buildings in northern Colorado and up and down the Front Range. Quick note, these guys have done work on our family's personal home, and it is so cool to come home to permanent lighting that you can change day by day, season by season. To check them out, go to jellylighting.com. Hey, just want to give a big shout out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. If you're a small business owner, one of the things that you need to navigate to be successful is all things online and digital in terms of marketing and your messaging. Imprint Digital, they're the real deal. They are the professionals and they know this world inside and out. Make sure to visit their website at imprint-digital.com. If you're a Christian small business owner and you live in Northern Colorado, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. The Foundry is a Christian executive peer advising group that connects other business owners in the community to help you focus on your faith, your life, your leadership, and your business. Make sure to check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com.
Yeah.
I mean, do you get to have those conversations? We're going through Mike McCallowick's Clockwork, and in that perspective gathering, you look at a newer team member like Steven. He's been here 5 years, Kathleen, 5 years. But still, that was still fairly new, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell to that person that's coming in new? And you can lay it all on the table for me. And they say, hey, what's up with Matt? And you're like, I knew him then, I knew him now. What have you seen in me?
Yeah, usually it'll be
the company here.
Yeah, usually it'll be some sort of experience with a customer or a team member or something where you'll handle it a way now that wouldn't have been how you would have handled it years ago. And I'll kind of, episode by episode or whoever's involved, I'll say, 10 years ago, this is how this would have went, right? And again, I praise you for the growth and the development you've had in that area, because it's not naturally how you're wired, and you do have to, consciously make an effort to do things differently, and that's tough when you talk about emotion. A great thing from Jim Hensel was getting emotionally hijacked, and whether you're saying things, making decisions, doing things wrapped up in the emotion, or if you're able to step out of that and do it with more of a clear head. And I think that's what you've been able to do, as you've put more emphasis and focus on that for yourself.
Now, I don't know about you, but I talked to Emily and the kids, like they see that, call it the worst version of me, but the most emotional version of me, just the raw, real. Is that the same with like you and Callie and the boys?
Yep.
Because Emily's probably sitting over there. She's over there with Joey. She's fine because she just did a podcast episode and we had a great time, but we were just talking about a lot of things. But one of the things is like, I've realized lately the order of which I commit my energy to things. I wake up early. Mm-hmm. They wake up later. So I'm looking at the energy of my investment and what they get kind of the worst, most drained, frustrated part of me to when you don't have anything left, you default back to that. I just come home pissed off, and they see the worst version. So we were like talking about that.
Yeah.
I was telling her the other day, especially with this real estate deal, I fired off an email and she goes, what did you fire off? And I just let her have what I wanted to fire off. Oh, I said that. Did you really say that? I go, no, I just need to say this to you, so I don't say this to him. And I don't know about you, but that happens just on a daily basis. They're like, whoa, they see me get totally fired up, and then peel back, and then hey, you've got to show up to whatever the responsibility is as a leader, and you can't let this this little guy over here. Right. You got to be this guy right here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate. My wife Callie is great. As a partner in life, and yeah, she gets a brunt probably of my emotional swings or the times that I am emotionally hijacked, and I'm thankful that she's able to, I wouldn't say see past them, but kind of knows like, okay, this is just a moment, but we'll go back to normal Kevin or whatever later. And my sons, man, it's funny as a parent, and I know you're the same way, as important of a role as that is. And as for me, it's like, I just want to set the best example. Again, back to my statement, I want to be a man that my sons can respect and emulate, but nobody's perfect. And there's times where I either do things or say things that I would not want them to emulate. Right. But I use that as a moment to own it, be accountable, own it, and apologize. I've apologized.
Good on you, man. Yeah.
I've apologized to Callie, and I make it a point to do it in front of them when I can. Right. I want them to see, hey, Dad's not perfect. If you screw up, own it, and it's okay to apologize. As much as you don't want to have those moments, it's like, okay, how can you turn this still into something that's good?
Well, and I know in those moments where you don't want to do it, for me, it's like, man, I feel like I failed. I shouldn't have said this. Like I told somebody to shut up or go away. Like Emily and I were getting into about something the other day about a booklet or a logo. And I'm just like, go away. Like, cause it was just, it boiled. And the kids are like, you just told mom to go away. And then they come in, they're like, dude, Haley goes, Dad, I'll kick you in the nuts. Like she'll step in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, we both came to the kids and we're like, we were just both highly stressed. Yeah. He didn't really mean go away. But what I've found is the longer between the moment when you realize that you need to apologize and when you do apologize, like the smaller you can make that window, the better. Mm-hmm. And the longer you drag it out, you teach your kids something that it can be drug out, and they're usually going to drag it out and park it 10 times longer. So I know that's just part of my story. Like the things that I saw and experienced, family of origin, environment, school, early years of business, when there's something you just know and you're like, yeah, I'm just not going to be accountable at all. And then you do. I mean, I try to have those conversations, right? Sometimes longer than others, but like never go to sleep pissed off. Never go to bed. Never let the sun go down on that kind of stuff, right? Says the Bible. How do you get it as quick as possible? Or what would you say to somebody that's like, that sounds great, but I just don't know how to do it? Like,
sure.
How do you do that?
Well, I guess I'm fortunate or in a way that it would just eat me up inside just naturally. I would really struggle with not, apologizing or owning it, because it would eat me alive, and I would have a hard time just doing anything else. So I guess I'm just lucky or kind of how I'm wired. But I have to get it off my chest. Yep. And so I'm able to do it, I guess almost selfishly in a way, because I don't want to carry that around for myself. I don't want to feel that way. So I just know for myself, I need to just get it off my chest and apologize or whatever that is as soon as I can, just so I can get back to the frame of mind and the mental state that I need to be in. Not even so much for the other person, but almost for myself or for selfishly in a way that I just got to do it quickly.
When you said selfish number of times, right? Yeah. So we talked about the leadership and the coaching, and it's like you can't you can't give anything to anybody that you don't have, right? So being selfish, I think it's a word, well, a person's being selfish. It's like selfish is a great thing. Filling your cup, making yourself better, investing in yourself, knowing when to unplug. Being selfish is one of the best things you can do, first for yourself, because you're the most important person in the room.
Yep.
Why? So that you can go be important for other people's lives. And I think whether you look at it in the faith space, the Christian martyrdom, or I'm going to pour into people till I have nothing left. Like, of course you have nothing left. So what are you coming home and giving your family or whatever else you're doing? You see this a lot in the work environment. So, we talk about this, work on yourself first and foremost. And you're the most important person in the room. And that is not selfish. That is a good thing. Now, if you do all of that and then you keep that in, and you don't let that out, that's where I see the problem is. I've been there before, right? I made all the money. I learned all this stuff, but I'm going to keep it because I think if I give it to them, they're going to steal it, right? It's just this, you're so filled with this goodness and it's overflowing. I think pouring to people is about being overflowingly, abundantly filled with good stuff to bring to people.
Yep.
You're not pouring out what you have, what you need. There's a baseline that you need. And when I learned that, I always felt bad about that. Well, I'm going on this retreat. I'm doing this thing. Sure. I'm away from the family. And I think you've done an amazing job of that. And I think more men need to do that and just say, hey, go be selfish, because look at a million different things. It's a whole nother podcast episode, but so many things say you can't do that you shouldn't do that. And that's stupid. It's bad. It's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the word selfish has a negative connotation. And for me, being disciplined with my time or intentional with my time, that was a big step where, calm, cool, collected. The word selfish, like, that's the last thing I want to be associated with, or I do not want my name and the word selfish in the same sentence. But when, I got really clear with my time and how I'm going to spend my time, for me, that's how, I use that analogy as selfish. Like, I am selfish with my time, 100%. And I think it does a couple things. It helps you stay in your framework and in your purpose and your values, for one, because you're controlling how your time's being spent. And two, those around you, it almost gives them permission to they see you doing it and they're like, oh, you know, you can say no. You know, that was another big one for me. I think it sort of coincided with parenthood where, you know, I got a coworker, buddy. It's like, hey, you want to come play poker on Friday night? It's like, no, that's not filling my bucket. That's not lining up with my values or my purpose. And so time for me was how I kind of overcame that selfishness. And the more you do it, I think the easier it gets. And you know, again, back to being the example for my sons. I pass a lot of things in my life through that filter, and it's like, you know, it's okay to say no. And as you talked about being selfish, yeah, if you're, you know, if your cup's not full and you think that you're just giving everything, your time, your energy to everybody else, that's not a good example for those around you, because they look at you, you know, burnout and not healthy and all these other things. You know, that's not a good example. But filling your own cup first and then being able to share what overflows with others, that is a good example. And that's that comes with being intentional.
And it's just funny we talk about it because I'm literally going through that right now. I spoke to Emily this weekend, and you know, I was a prick boss to work for when you first started working here. Let's just call that what it is, right? Grown a lot. And I share this story, and I went from just all about me, and like I became a millionaire. I didn't make other millionaires. I wasn't focused on that, right? That's a big part of my focus now is I want people to understand a framework of how I got to where I am and that you can do it too.
Yeah.
And if you're here working, there's no excuses other than your excuses and those aren't going to last too long here if you keep having them. And it's all for good, you know, but I'm sitting here today and I'm literally going through, I went to this, snapped all the way to this other side of like, because I wasn't this, I'm going to pour into people and contribute and say yes to everything. And we're going through some pretty high level consulting right now. And what we talked about around the clockwork table was my heart's too big. Like who would have thought in 2010, 11, when you're here, that one day my heart would be too big.
Yep.
And it's getting taken advantage of because I'm letting it, because I'm not saying no and I'm not creating boundaries, and everybody around me, oh, Matt, you do so many things, dude. I'm done. I'm about done and burned out right now. No, seriously. Yeah. So it's cool to go through that. And what's really exciting, because we got about 10, 15 minutes here left on this episode. We're going to run it back and do another one. So you've shared where you've come from, how we got together, our journey in business and leadership, kids growing up, families growing up. You know, we're sitting here today talking about a lot of direction that we're heading in, because we didn't even talk about this. You're the company's first. We didn't even talk about what you do here now. We should do
Better
that.
late than never.
Is you know, lead estimator and sales. Like you're the go-to guy, and leading into 2024, vice president of M&E Painting, right? You literally started washing houses, and you're going to be taking the torch and taking the reins of M&E Painting. At least that's the discussion right now. But you're also heading over across the ocean with me next April for Ultimate Immersion Experience to help facilitate Gentle Art of Leadership. We're taking 6 people over there for just an amazing adventure challenge experience. We're going to run all over the country and push people out of their comfort zone and literally take all of this stuff that we've learned together over the past decades and implement this into 6 people's lives. Like while we go jam in Spain, which you can talk about because we did that last year. It's like, what are you looking forward to? Not even so much with that, right? Because Gentle Art of Leadership, we're talking a million different ways this thing can go. But like, what are you looking forward to based on all of this experience, where you are, what you've learned, where you're going? Like, what does that mean to you? What do you see? And then what do you want to tell somebody that maybe can't see that vision or see as clearly as you can right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm just so thankful of all the opportunities that you've given me over the years on the personal growth and development side. You know, Callie, my wife's always done a really great job of keeping that perspective for me, whether it's, you know, after a long day, a long week, and, you know, sometimes I'll forget about that or won't think about that. And over the years, she's always been really good about, you know, Matt's done a lot for you. Did you forget about this and that? And you know, looking back, like I said, I'm so thankful for you and the opportunities you've given me. And again, being in that headspace, they've all, I've grown as I've been exposed to these different things. And, the guys that we talked about earlier, that was all through you and through M&E. And I would not have had those experiences and grown to where I am today without you. And, ultimate immersion experience in 2021?
22.
2022.
Just last March. Like 15 months ago we were there. It hasn't been that
that's
long.
Crazy. Just an amazing experience. I think you really dialed it in with not only the stuff you wanted to cover in the activities and that, the experiences, but when you get put in a different country where it's not your first language, I stick out like a sore thumb in Spain. There's not a lot of people who look like me there. And so getting uncomfortable is not a place a lot of people are willing to get to. And I think that's where the growth happens. And so, physically, intentionally putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation before you even get to any of the exercises or the experience, that was a learning experience for me. But once you're in there, again, with the right mindset and frame of mind, you're almost, yearning or looking forward to, whatever can come your way. Hey, I'm already in another country. Nobody looks like me. I can barely communicate when I'm ordering a cup of coffee. So bring it on. Like, let's do this thing. And, like a lot of things we talked about, saying no or being intentional with your time as you do this more and more, it gets less uncomfortable, maybe more comfortable. But when you pair this together, just being in a different place with, maybe in our case, some people, the M&E team obviously knew a lot of them well, but for this next one we got coming up, there's probably not a lot of people that you're going to know well. So you're surrounded by people that you don't know that well. You're in a different country. You don't know how to speak the language. But again, I think with the right mindset and being okay with being uncomfortable and using it as an opportunity to grow as an individual, I mean, that's what life's all about. And if you have the intention and the drive and the desire to get better, to, whatever those values and purpose are that you've identified, it's a great way to check a lot of those boxes.
And I love how you said, because I knew this, like once you're over there, you're not going home. So drop you in a country you've never been to, don't know the language, don't know the people, don't know the geography. I know everybody there, they just had this inherent trust of me. Because the two questions were, hey, do you trust me? And just to know that nobody's going to die in any of these challenges. None of them are life-threatening.
Yeah.
And we just dove in.
Yeah.
So when you're put into that environment, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to go do a breakout session down the street at a office building in Fort Collins, and we're going to get uncomfortable. You're still in Fort Collins. Yep. You still drove up to where you're speaking English, and you're going to go home in 3 hours. Like, how uncomfortable can you get?
Yeah.
We're 5,000 miles away. Some people had never flown, and you're dropped into Spain. I hand you an orange envelope. You open it up, and without giving too much away, when you read that first challenge that we did in Alcalá, after two of our team members barely made it there, right? Like we're waiting for these guys because they missed the plane and everything's happening. And I say, go. You're in it. And you're like, bring it on.
Yeah. Well, first it's like, what the, how in the, but again, I feel very fortunate just in our relationship, how long we've known each other. I trust you and I know that your intention is good. So it's like, I'm not worried about the details. I trust Matt. I know he's got a reason behind what he's doing and I know his intention's good. So I was fortunate, probably more than most, that maybe didn't have, the history of the relationship that you and I have. But I think part of that too is, control. And a lot of us go through life struggling, wanting to control everything. And another lens or filter I look at is, okay, control your controllables. So what is in my control and what's not? And more often than not, it's your attitude and your energy. And, I made the choice to get on a plane and end up in Spain, but, the different adventures and experiences, those are what they are. And I put myself here so I'm going to have a good attitude and I'm going to bring a good energy, and I'm not going to worry about things that I can't control. And, I think we're fortunate. I mean, we're Americans. We live in Northern Colorado, Fort Collins, Loveland. We have a pretty comfortable life. And I think a lot of people do. And so, human nature, you're just accustomed to seeking out the comfortable and not letting yourself get too uncomfortable or, keeping control of these things. But the more you can put yourself in situations that aren't the norm, that are uncomfortable, again, I just think that's where the growth happens.
I love it. And there were two moments I want to close with. Then we'll close with one more thing on ultimate immersion, and then we'll wrap up. Is you sat in Sevilla on one of the streets, and our video tech was recording. Actually, we brought video tech along, a little testimonial, and it's on the website.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it, but you said, "I can't believe I'm in Spain," and share that again, because again, you're probably giving away a little bit of what we're going to do. It's already out there.
Sure.
But that when I for me, I was like, wow, that connected all that purpose, all that money, all that time, all that energy, all that investment. When you said that, do you remember what that is? And just share that.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember the exact, but it's an attitude of gratitude, and so I wanted to just kind of step back and just look around, and I think it was something to the effect of, I can't believe I'm in Spain, I'm with these people, I've done these things. I'm eating this food, and it was, again, just kind of stepping out and just having an attitude of appreciation or thankfulness that, the M and the E, Matt and Emily, thought enough of me to provide me this experience and just soak it up and enjoy it and make the most of it and, be thankful for what you have and the opportunities that you have. And so for me, it was kind of that sort of thing. Yeah. Just make the most of the opportunity, don't waste it, and be thankful.
So the last challenge experience that we did was actually not planned. I don't know if you knew this, and I've been talking about this more, but we were running all over the country. You're driving, right? We have 2 vans, which we're never going to do that again. So we learned a lot about what we're not going to do, but we literally finished up a long day. And we were planning to drive 3 hours away from Sevilla. I don't know if I've told you this. And we're going to go to the coast of Malaga to do something involving the water and the Mediterranean. And the weather wasn't allowing it. So I had no backup plan.
Yeah.
I had no backup plan. But at dinner, on our first evening, when we went up to Segovia to eat the little baby pig, which is a whole nother story.
Right.
Some people freaked out. We should have warned them that we were going to eat a baby pig. But we took some rocks, and we wrote with a Sharpie on those rocks some of the things that you were carrying, that you were holding, that were holding you back, that were weighing you down. And we were going to drive 3 hours away to go do something meaningful with those in a really fun, unique, and challenging way. And we couldn't.
Yep.
So we are in Sevilla already. I'm like, all right, what do we do? All right, we're going to head down to the Guadalquivir River. That's the main river that flows through Sevilla. Yeah. Right, splits it in half. And talk about that experience, because, man, I remember giving you the biggest hug I think I've ever given anybody in my life. And I'm emotional, and you're emotional, and we're emotional. And that was totally not planned. Yeah. So talk about that. Like, we called an audible. Things weren't going well, and we couldn't control it. Yep. So we responded accordingly. And talk about how we closed out that trip.
Right. I mean, I think, things aren't in your control. You got to be okay with that and make the most of what you can control. And so it worked out great. I think the people that were there probably didn't know that it wasn't planned. Like, it was smooth. But yeah, the symbolic nature of, getting this weight off your shoulders, something that's holding you back, throwing it in the river, never to be seen again. I think we all have something like that. And when you're there, whether it's a level 10 or a level 2, that's not as important as just, knowing that whatever that is that is holding you back, here's your chance to get rid of it. And, for you and I knowing, I guess, maybe more about you or your history, I knew that was big for you. And so, I'm a bit of a hugger, I guess, especially in those kind of moments. And so I just felt like, man, I know how important this is to Matt. I know what he just did. I want Matt to know that I know how awesome it was. And yeah, it was a cool moment, one I'll never forget. And again, just thankful that I was there, thankful that I was able to share that with you.
Yeah, and I'm excited because that was just the beginning. That was the trial run.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting ready to head over there to do this together. We're talking about some other things. Just make sure as we talk about all these ideas, tell me no when it's too much. We were just joking about that the other day, but we're looking to do some big things with this, for a lot of people.
Yep.
And we'll talk about it when the time's right. But we've already kind of talked about it a little bit in the show. So people will look back when the time is right and we announce this if it does roll out. And I think the dots will connect. So somebody's watching this and they've heard all this, and I always love to be the devil's advocate, right? Because somebody's watching this right now, and I think the people that are going to take this and go with it, we know what they're going to do.
Yep.
But there's always that person that's like, sounds great, Matt. Sounds great, Kevin. Yeah, but you didn't have this story. You're two white Christian males that live in northern Colorado and you have a nice life, or whatever it is that they say, right?
Yep.
And they're down on themselves, wherever they're from. What do you say to them? They say, I can't do it. What you're saying doesn't work for me. That's great for you, great for Matt, not great for me, not going to happen. What do you say to them before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I would say you're right. If you're telling yourself, I can't, it won't, then you're right. And it starts there. It starts with the language that you use, the conversation that you're having with yourself. And if you're finding every reason why something's not going to work, why something's not going to help, until you change that language, until you change that self-conversation, you're right. But what I do know is what we did, what we will do, how we did it, there's no other option than for it to be impactful, for it to be beneficial, for it to be a great learning experience and a growth experience that you're not going to get anywhere else. But until you decide that's what you want, until you open that door, then it's not going to be worth it. And step one is that language, that self-conversation. But I guarantee you, if you're in the right frame of mind and you're willing to get uncomfortable, that this will change your life.
And everybody's an author, and everybody writes a book. And everybody imprints this language and these behaviors and these patterns, and they do life a certain way. Mm-hmm. And that leaves this history, and that history touches other people, right? So we talk about this all the time. If we changed our book, right?
Yep.
We're changing our lives. We're changing our family trees in different capacities that we have decided to do that. But it was intentional, and it was hard. It would have been a lot easier for you and I just to hang back where we were. It would have been really comfortable.
Yep.
We could have been really fat, really happy, really cush.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that we're not and we didn't. And yeah, everybody's going to write a book. And if you don't like the title of your freaking book, change it. And
exactly.
It's totally up to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Love it.
That's what you can control. How you got programmed and your story up to whatever point it is. That's in the past. It's out of your control. What are you doing moving forward? And if you look at it that way and you take ownership of that, then you'll start doing things a little bit differently. Maybe having that self-speak that's a little more positive and not negative, and being open to new experiences and getting uncomfortable because you want to change, certain things that got you to where you are. And if you keep doing the same things and you expect a different result, I think they say that's the definition of crazy. So,
crazy, stupidity, something not good.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to fly across the ocean 5,000 miles and spend $20,000 on ultimate immersion experience to do that. It's just a matter of turn off this podcast, pay attention to the language you use, the way you reply to an email or a text message, how you're going to show up when you get home tonight. And if you don't like the way you're showing up, identify and pick a different way to show up.
Yep. Write
down how you're going to show up, and then just do it once. See what happens.
Yep.
And then do it twice. See what happens. And you're still going to do it 98 times the old way, right? It's not this, it can be an immediate thing.
Sure.
But you're going to get pulled back.
Yep.
Just one little step at a time. Mm-hmm. Like the whole journey is just one step at a time. But you've got to take that first step. You've got to take that first step if you want to change your story, change your direction. Love it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be big. Just has to be consistent. And if you find yourself, married or girlfriend or boyfriend or kids, communicate it and be okay with being open and like, hey, here's something that I want to change and here's my intention, and find a support network or supportive people, whether it's family, spouse, coworkers, whoever, and be vulnerable and tell them what you're working on. And I guess, if you don't have those people around you, well, that's something else to work on. But yeah, it's okay to be intentional and be vulnerable and say, hey, here's something that I don't like that I'm working on. And you'll be surprised. Most people want to be helpful. Most people want to, be encouraging, and that can really, really help.
Well, we grew up in a time where, say we were surrounded by people that weren't and didn't have the magic of the internet, right? So it's like now, so maybe everybody in your life is not that. They're pulling you away from that purpose. This is why we're doing this podcast.
Yep.
There'll be more of these episodes. Go back and watch the other ones. I mean, this is why we do this stuff, right? It's like somebody's invested in me. Somebody's invested in you. We've invested in each other.
Yep.
And it's our duty here to invest that in other people. It's a bigger calling. It's not about money. It's not about business. There's money and business involved. But how can you and I sit here after the way God brought our stories together? Before I think either of us knew God. But we're sitting here today and we know God.
Yep.
We'll talk about that on another episode. How do you not, how can we sit here and not share this with people? It would just be so totally and utterly wrong.
It would. And, it's if someone somewhere can hear this and be encouraged or, take that next step, then that's what it's all about. It just multiplies. And, you get the strength and the courage to do this kind of thing when you're living in your framework and you're living in your values and you're living in your purpose, because it's so authentic that you can't help but share it. And when it's impactful for yourself, most of us want to have that impact for somebody else. And it's almost hard not to share it or be enthusiastic about it, because you want good for other people. And here's how good it was for me. Here's how great it can be for you.
So at one point for all of us, we're gonna be done with our story here. We're gonna write the final chapter, final word, period, closed book. You're here in the building every day, but people that come in here come up to our big color wall, which is right behind you here.
Yep.
And you grabbed a card with your favorite color, and I ask people to write whatever they want to write. It's one sentence, phrase, Bible verse, saying, whatever, that they want to leave with the world when they leave it. And we're going to wrap up the show and have you share yours.
Yes. So in the words of Yoda, do or do not, there is no try.
Kevin Voorhees, that's a wrap.
Thank you.
A big shout out and thank you to one of our sponsors, M&E Painting and Roofing. M&E was actually founded by my wife Emily and I back in 2005. And for the last 2 decades, we've been here in northern Colorado, of one of the leaders in residential and commercial repainting, as well as most recently installing residential roofs. So if you need to paint, re-roof, you got hit by a hailstorm, we can take care of whatever your home needs from top to bottom. You can find us on the web at mandepainting.com.